name is Simone Kesterton. I'm art director at Daedalic Entertainment, and for the last couple of years now I've been working on the Deponia Trilogy, and my function was art direction, and that basically entitles finding the look of the game and keeping it together. Of course, such a game consists of tons of people working on it. We had so many artists, I don't even know how many. Probably if we checked in the credits we'd see. And with so many people working on a game, you have to keep the vision consistent, and that was my function. And on the other side, I also actually worked on the game. I animated the walk of Rufus, for example, and I also worked on the cutscenes. That was my main job next to art direction. Right at the beginning, nothing existed from the game. We just had an idea. We had the idea in the head of our creative director, Gunnar, also known as Poki, and with him, we had to find the world. And my job was the character design. He had done basic sketches of the characters, and I took those and tried to find the look, because he just did very rough things which looked rather wobbly, and we had to find a refined and pretty look which we wanted to represent. So he told me, we talked about the characters, he told me a lot of stuff, and so I tried to find my vision, and we had, going back and forth, we kind of found how Rufus would look in the refined thing. And what I really like about how we found the characters, because Rufus was basically a cooperation. I showed Poki my sketches. He wanted him to be really steampunky, and but he was too steampunky, and we took an old version of Rufus which he drew. His old character had this vest which usually our trash people who take away the trash wear, and we kind of put that into the steampunky Rufus, and he got a really own feeling after that. And also Rufus's face was a bit different, and Poki just came and said, okay, this nose, and he just drew the nose into my character, and we had the final thing. It was really fun to see. This is Rufus in the first version of Poki. This is what I had to go on. It was basically just a vision of the character, kind of like this grumpy guy. But Poki's thoughts on it was that he was supposed to be kind of steampunk. And here we came fairly near to what Rufus was going to be, but he was a bit too large, too big, too human proportioned. So we wanted to have him cartoonier, and he had too much stuff on him. But this was kind of the face. We wanted to have the hat, and I refined the face. And Poki just came and said, "Okay, but change the nose." You can actually see the old nose, which is still, which I rubbed out, and he drew in the black nose. That's what Rufus ended up looking like. Here are some versions of his colors. Yes, this was our colors at the beginning. This was too military, like warlike. And here we had a version where he looked even more than like Guybrush Threepwood than he already does. We kind of noticed there at this point, so we changed a bit more radically with the colors. And here, yes, and then finally we added the vest. The vest, which the original character also had, and this gave him a bit more unique style. That he wasn't just the steampunk character. He was really weird. And also with Goal, with her, the main character, I sort of did scribbles, and she was a little bit more girly. And he was saying, "No, okay, I just kind of have this jumpsuit thing going." And then I changed it to that, and at the beginning she had green hair, and he said, "No, okay, let's take the color of the vest of Rufus and give it to the hair." And so we sort of suddenly had this vivid red head, which was still very etherical. She was always supposed to be like something which was out of reach, something a bit like a little bit godly, but also you kind of know because she has in the first part she's really no, basically she's always sleeping. She had this. She was this pure character, but with the red hair, you kind of knew there was fire in this. And when she would wake up, bam, then Rufus did get it from her. So this is all stuff which goes into the character design.
What? Well, who was that?
Me. It was me.
Hello, my name is Gunnar Bergmann and I'm the lead animator, or was the lead animator on Goodbye Deponia. And together with Simone, my job was to check all the animations, have an eye on the animation lists. The scripter and game designer wrote. My job was having the overview over these lists and over the end products and animations for the game.
Rufus seems like a brutal thug to me.
Rufus? Brutal? Never.
What's important for a good animation is a good description from the game designers or the scripters who made all the setting in the screens, so we have the context to solve the problem with the animation, to get it right in the screen, let the figures do the right things, or let BG animations, so non-figure animations, do the right things in the screens. That's very important. That's the basic for a good animation, to start a good animation. And of course the skills of the animator, very important. So the difficulty between, or the difference between animations in film or TV or in games is, and that's what's often criticized, is that there is obvious less animation than in a film or in a TV series maybe. This is all about the time you have for a game. It's about the data space you have in a game. They have 24 pictures per second. We do around about 12 then. So that's why often animations are not so fluidly, or can't be so fluidly when it's hand-drawn stuff. We hold the flag for old school 2D animation, and in this case we have to make some cuts for this term. So it's if we do big animations, non-PC or non-console could play it because it's too much data space. We do it all in Photoshop or 2D stuff, and when animators come to a project with a background in movie animation or TV animation, first time they are shocked, what, you do it with Photoshop? And we say, yeah, but it's we don't have this big 100 frames animations. So we have this, with the last versions of Photoshop, you have all the animation stuff, all the animation windows and tools you need in the program, and the basics are the same like in other professional movie animation programs, so we can do it as well. And we do it frame by frame, so it's possible to do this with Photoshop. And if a figure do a basic move like take something or do an idle, so in this case we do between 8 and 12 frames, and we draw it frame by frame, and we can let's play it in Photoshop and check it like the old times, flipping the pages and correct them. And Then in the classical Photoshop layer style we can color it and make the clean outlines, and in the end we merge it all together and render it out for the scripters, and they put it into the game. So that's basically how we did it.
The backgrounds in Deponia, they were done. We have our background artist was Michael Benrath. He did the backgrounds for the first part and the second part and a large part of the third part, but he at the end, he never could do all the backgrounds because that would have been just too much effort. So we had to find other people to also do the backgrounds, and they had to imitate his style. So this is the background style we were trying to achieve with other people as well working on it. This, for instance, the next example is by Irina Zinner, but we'll start off with Poki's scribble. This is what we get when we start off a background. Poki thinks about the game, and he already draws the backgrounds as he needs them for the game to work. And this is what we get, and then the background artist has to correct the perspective and find the right style for it. From the sketch we then get the line art, which is just a lot of work. But you can still see it's fairly similar to what it started off being, just a bit more and more detail. And then we add color, and this is the final background. We have in Deponia we have the normal gameplay. There we have all animations and everything, but then sometimes to tell more of the story we need cutscenes, and these had to be worked on. We had to work on from a different angle than the in-game stuff, because basically if we would have done it like the in-games, we would have had to do Disney-like animation basically, because we would have just had complete animation scenes, which would have been far more than we could have done. So we sort of found a method which allowed us to tell the story without having to do so much as Disney does. And we basically, the method we used was, first we had a storyboard, which our creative director did, and from that I took these and found the key poses, and these were just cut apart and then animated as like puppets basically in After Effects. That was done by Rino Pelli. Yeah, and in some scenes we just took some parts which we had to animate frame by frame, and the other stuff was like just tweaked and moved in After Effects by the joints. And that sounds simple, but it isn't that simple, but it's still easier than animating it completely. And that's how basically games work. You have a lot of people which need to work on one goal, complete effort, and that's what I like about games, because you sort of, nobody can really say, oh yes, I did this completely. No, it's always so many people which at the end create something very special, and nobody would have been able to do it alone.